The observation deck of the Celestial Dawn hummed with its usual nocturnal rhythm, a symphony of distant engine purrs and life support systems breathing through metallic lungs. Ella sat cross-legged near the viewport, her back against the cold bulkhead, watching the stars streak past in ribbons of light. The humans had been aboard the Zathin warship for 3 standard months now, ever since the treaty had been signed, the first peaceful accord between Earth and the apex predator species of the Andromeda sector. It had been a long day of negotiations. Ella's shoulders ached from hours of translating diplomatic nuances between human and Zathin officials. She'd intended to return to her quarters, but the observation deck called to her with its promise of solitude and infinite sky. Her eyelids grew heavy as she gazed at the cosmos, and before she realized it, sleep claimed her where she sat. Rio found her there 20 minutes later. He'd been searching the ship's common areas, concerned when Elle hadn't answered her comm. The young engineer paused at the entrance to the observation deck, relief flooding through him at the sight of her, until he noticed she wasn't alone. 3 Zathin cubs, no larger than Earth's house cats but infinitely more dangerous, circled the sleeping human. Their scales shimmered in hues of deep purple and midnight blue, razor-sharp claws clicking softly against the deck plating. Their parents, warriors who could tear through reinforced hull plating, were nowhere to be seen. Rio's breath caught in his throat. He'd read the briefings. Zathin cubs were born with fully functional hunting instincts. They could track prey across kilometers. Their senses evolved to detect the slightest movement, the faintest heartbeat, and humans, with their warm blood and soft flesh, registered as prey to every predator species in the known galaxy. The smallest cub approached Elle first, its head tilted in curiosity. It sniffed the air around her, processing the strange scent of this alien creature. Rio's hand moved slowly toward his emergency beacon, but he froze when the cub did something unexpected. It chirped. The sound was surprisingly gentle, almost musical. The cub circled Elle once more, then twice, before sitting directly in front of her. It studied her peaceful face with large, intelligent eyes that reflected the starlight like polished gemstones. Then, with deliberate care, it placed one small paw on her knee. Elle didn't stir. Her chest rose and fell in the deep rhythm of genuine sleep, completely unaware of the apex predator testing her defenses. The second cub, slightly larger and bolder, approached from the side. It mimicked the first, chirping softly before sniffing Elle's outstretched hand. Its forked tongue flickered out, tasting the air around her skin. Rio tensed, ready to shout, to run, to do something, but the cub simply bumped its snout against her palm like an affectionate pet. The third cub, the smallest and clearly the most adventurous of the trio, made a decision that nearly stopped Rio's heart. It climbed, using Elle's bent knee as a launching point. The tiny predator scrambled up her leg with surprising agility. Its claws, capable of rending flesh from bone, remained carefully retracted. It navigated across her lap, up her torso, tiny chirps of effort escaping its throat as it climbed. When it reached Elle's shoulder, it paused, considering its options with the serious contemplation only a child could muster. Then it curled up. The cub nestled into the crook of Elle's neck, its scaled body fitting perfectly against her shoulder. It released a long, contented sigh, a sound Rio had never heard a Zathin make, and closed its eyes. Within seconds, the predator cub was asleep, using the human as its pillow. The other 2 cubs exchanged glances, then proceeded to join their sibling. The second climbed into Elle's lap, circling twice before settling like a scaly cat. The first remained by her knee but leaned its weight against her leg, its breathing slowly synchronizing with hers. Rio stood motionless, his mind racing to process what he was witnessing. Every xenobiology course he'd taken, every survival briefing, every stern warning about maintaining distance from predator species, all of it crumbled in the face of this impossible scene. "You're seeing this too, right?" The voice startled Rio. He spun to find Commander Thelxus, the Zathin security chief, standing beside him. The massive warrior's presence had been completely silent, a reminder of how deadly these beings truly were. Yes, Commander," Rio managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Should I wake her? Are they in danger?" Thelxus's expression, difficult to read on his reptilian features, seemed almost amused. "Danger? No, human Rio. My offspring are quite safe." "Your offspring?" Rio's eyes widened. "But I thought we were warned." That Zothin cubs are dangerous? Thelxus clicked his jaw, the species equivalent of a chuckle. They are to prey, to threats, to anything that triggers their hunting instincts. He gestured toward El and the sleeping cubs with one taloned hand. But your companion El does not register as prey to them. I don't understand. The commander moved closer to the observation deck, his movements careful not to disturb the sleeping group. When we first encountered humans, our analysts were confused. You are small, soft, without natural weapons. By all measures, you should be prey. But you don't behave as prey behaves. Rio watched as the smallest cub adjusted its position on El's shoulder, burrowing deeper into her warmth. Prey runs, Thelxus continued. Prey hides. Prey shows fear. But humans? He looked at Rio with something that might have been respect. Humans sit calmly among predators. Humans fall asleep in the presence of danger. Humans show no fear, not because you cannot feel it, but because you choose not to show it. To a Zothin cub learning to read the universe, this is not the behavior of prey. This is the behavior of an equal, perhaps even... He paused, considering his words. A packmate. Rio looked back at Ella. In her sleep, she'd unconsciously adjusted, her hand coming up to rest gently on the cub in her lap. The tiny predator purred, actually purred at her touch. The treaty negotiations have been difficult, Thelxus said quietly. Many of my people fear humans. They don't understand you. They see your soft bodies and think weakness. But then you venture into the void in metal boxes. You challenge species twice your size with nothing but determination. You refuse to submit. He gestured again toward the sleeping tableau. But my cubs understand what my warriors are still learning. Humans are not prey. You are predators who chose compassion. And that, Rio of Earth, is the most dangerous thing of all. Ella stirred slightly, and the cub on her shoulder chirped softly, as if soothing her back to deeper sleep. It worked. She settled again, a small smile crossing her face. Should I wake her? Rio asked again, though his heart was no longer pounding with fear. Would you disturb a perfect moment? Thelxus replied. Let them sleep. All of them. Tomorrow the diplomats will argue about territorial boundaries and trade agreements. Tonight, let this be the real treaty, the one written not in words but in trust. Rio nodded, understanding. He pulled out his portable camera and took a single image, not for any official record, but because humanity needed to see this. They needed to know that across the vast darkness of space, where 1,000 predator species lurked, humans had found a way to be something unprecedented, not prey, not predators, but something in between, something new. Something that made apex predators feel safe enough to sleep on human shoulders. As Rio left the observation deck, leaving El and the Zothin cubs to their peaceful slumber, he couldn't help but think that this single image would do more for human-Zothin relations than 1,000 diplomatic meetings ever could. Sometimes, the galaxy didn't need warriors or politicians. It just needed someone brave enough, or perhaps foolish enough, to fall asleep among monsters and trust that they'd wake up unharmed, and somehow, impossibly wonderfully, humanity kept proving that such trust was not misplaced. The stars continued their eternal dance beyond the viewport, witnesses to the moment when predators and humans stopped seeing each other as threats and started seeing each other as something infinitely more valuable. Family,